Hello, everybody. I'm your host, Urbina, and this is Omnichannel X's Omnichannel Podcast. Omnichannel X is brought to you by Urbina Consulting. Omnichannel X is our international learning portal where we host the thought leaders and case studies we think will be most helpful for content-rich organizations trying to build better relationships across all touchpoints. Now, enjoy the show. Hello, everybody. This is Urbina, your host of the Omnichannel Podcast, brought to you by Omnichannel X and Urbina Consulting. I am Omnichannel X's content curator and program director and the founder of Urbina Consulting. So I have the pleasure of bringing you my favorite thought leading speakers and contributors to this community about how we can all go omnichannel more effectively, faster, and with less risk. So I'm here today with Ari Halland. Ari is a independent consultant who works in the areas of strategic content design and helps bridge the gap between multiple different functions within the business and interconnect silos. Today, we're going to be talking to Ari about AI and its relationship with things like content modeling, content design, and being strategic for creating content for people and machines. So, all right. Hi, welcome. Thank you for joining us. Why don't you tell the group a little bit about yourself and how you got into this?
Okay, so I'm a Norwegian, and I found out the other day I've been working for a quarter of a century with digital strategy, design, and communications.
Makes you feel old, doesn't it?
It does. But kind of this, I think everything is about people at some level. And the experience you get, it's not just the tools you're using right now, it's about the overall thinking and how people cooperate to create great experiences and to connect strategy and user needs in cooperation within the organization to create delightful user experiences that reaches strategic goals for the organization.
So, what kind of roles have you had in these 25 years?
Let me count the ways. I've been an information architect for quite a few years, UX designer, and also a strategy consultant. So I've been working quite a lot with content and users and how strategy connects to this. And I've done 100 projects and counting, and I actually I've been doing user testing with more than 1,000 people. So I have kind of, the background is mainly user experience design.
Excellent.
And content.
Excellent. You're making me jealous. I wish I'd kept track over all these years. It's fun to have the numbers. So I'm gonna see if I can figure it out retrospectively. So Ari, you're kind of most famous and well associated with this idea of the core model, which I'm going to ask you about. But I would like to first put that into context of what a lot of people are talking about right now, and a themed session series that we're running this year on content modeling. And of course, everyone is very excited about artificial intelligence. So these things are all connected, which we'll get to, I'm sure, in the course of the conversation. But I wanted to ask you first what you feel the big kind of challenge is with adopting AI right now for kind of organizations that you're working with.
Yeah, AI, generative AI are fantastic tools, and it's a paradigm shift, and it's evolving in an extremely fast pace. So, but I think the main thing with AI, it can do whatever you want, but you have to know what you want. That's the main thing. You still have to know your users, their needs, and you have to have a clear eye on what is your strategic business goals. and you need to prioritize based on this. And you need to involve the organization and kind of align around these priorities. So, but if you have this in place, you have a much better picture of what to ask for, what you want AI to do for you, to create the prompts and feed the inputs that the AI models need. Sorry about that. So if you know what you want, then you can use AI. If you don't know, then AI will not be that helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm saying now, I don't know if I've said it in the podcast before this, the kind of phrase I'm saying is AI turns us all into programmers without being coders, in the sense that we can create logic and we can create what we want, a series of events. And before we had to go to coders who spoke computer language to be able to translate that so that the computers would actually do what we want. Now with AI, we're at a point where we can speak to the computers directly, all of us. And that creates a much bigger responsibility for us to have our requirements, our thoughts, our desires, and the logic of all this much better worked out. So I think that in that aspect, it causes humans to raise their game, which I think is fantastic. So when we are doing this, when we're kind of trying to figure out what do we want, we're trying to get strategic about our content. It's a design process. We're having a dialogue with each other. We're doing user research, and as I like to say, we're treating the content like a product. What are the requirements? What's going to be the beta release? What is going to be the 1.0 release? And how are we going to add features and functions over time to our content? So the term content design is rising fast in the market. What do you mean when we talk about strategic content design?
So what is content? So how I define content is whatever answers you provide to user needs. So it's text, multimedia, database functionality, everything. So content design is about providing the content that the user wants, where they want it, in the way they want it. And being able to think strategically is your ability to plan for the future. So I think strategic content design is about creating and maintaining, not just creating, but the right content. So you can provide this across channels and prioritized based on strategy and user needs, and in a cross-competency collaboration within the organization. And the core model is a tool that I developed to do just this.
Yeah, so I think the maintenance thing is really, really important. I think we have a lot of feed the machine kind of, or feed the beast kind of content processes where we want to create more and new, and we default to creating stuff rather than leveraging. So I think that's very interesting when you say that the core model can address all of that. So how does that work? Can we define the core model first of all?
Yeah, the core model is a kind of a framework. It's a very simple canvas with 6 elements, and this is the basis for a workshop format. And it has kind of a practical philosophy for how to collaborate cross-competency. But I think basically it's about flipping the perspective and to start out with one core at a time instead of trying to solve everything at once. So you kind of define a starting point, then you can see the connections and you can create answers that are channel agnostic. Okay, so yeah, it's a simple framework to take the strategy and the customer journey down to earth. And it's 6 simple elements that anyone can understand one at a time. And together, these elements I think it's design thinking in a nutshell, so that everyone can understand.
So when you say a core, what does that mean, a core?
Yeah, a core could be actually anything. It could be a process, it could be a web page, it could be a user need, it could be a product. So you define a starting point, you make a hypothesis about what your core is, and then you use this model to kind of dive into and find out how you should leverage what you want within this framework of user needs and business objectives and all of this.
So it's the center of your discussion that you're having in that workshop.
Yeah. So it's you form a hypothesis, and then you use this canvas to see if it's the right hypothesis. So you might end up with several cores, or you might find that there is no core. You're actually solving the right problem. So it's a kind of a thinking tool.
Solving the right problem or solving the wrong problem?
Hopefully solving the right, but you might find that you're actually solving not necessarily the wrong problem, but your hypothesis of the channel and the format might be wrong.
Right.
So I have an example of this.
Yeah, it would be good to put this also in the process context. When would you have such a workshop? Like, what do you need before it, so that you can be ready for such a workshop? And so, if you can tell us in your examples a little bit of that backstory, that'd be great.
Yeah, the core model, you have to know your strategy, and you have to know the user needs, and you have to have a hypothesis of what to make. So it doesn't you have to know this. You have to have insights into users and their tasks before you can use this framework. But typically it fits in a kind of a start phase of defining product, making a minimal viable product, or working with your value proposition. But it can also use it as you kind of working with the product to take a step back and see if you're making the right thing, and how does the thing you're making connect to the rest of the customer journey, and how does it connect to your other products, and does it solve your business objectives? So it's kind of typically at the start, but also as you go along between sprints, for instance, to take this small step back and see, are we making the right thing? Do we actually solve the problems we should solve?
So I want to remind everybody that when we say product, with that product could be content, it could be websites, it could be video, it could be whatever. Although there's no reason it can't be a product in the more traditional sense, like an application or a device. So do you have any particular projects where you felt that this added a lot of value?
Yeah, a kind of a classical case for the core model was this. We're doing a website redesign for the Norwegian Cancer Union, and they had a very sender-oriented website, and the information architecture was.
Sorry, they had a what-oriented website?
Yeah, so sender-oriented, not a user-oriented.
Oh,
they
so
were kind of centered around, around our needs and not the user needs.
Right.
Yeah, and the information architecture was basically silos, was the departments in the organization. You had a lot of news articles, happy news that we want to produce that doesn't really solve user needs. And they had a main call to action, which was become a member now. So this was the basis And then we looked into user needs. We defined the user, or what we did was we actually asked the users, why do you come to the website? What are your user tasks? And what typically happens when you do that is that you see there are some top tasks that is really 80% of the requests are just a small part of the content. So this is about identifying those top tasks and use that as a tool for prioritizing. So user task is a very important part of the core model. So what we find was that users had kind of 3 tasks. Either they had cancer and wanted to know how to live with cancer, or they are afraid that they might have or might get cancer. So the main user tasks was to find the symptoms, how to treat, and how to prevent. And the business objectives mainly is to help patients and families live good lives, increase, and also they wanted to increase the number of inquiries to this cancer line. So they had a professional nurses and other people who kind of could relate and answer questions for real human beings. So they wanted to increase the number of requests to the cancer line. And also, of course, they want to increase donations and increase membership. So this was the kind of the starting point. We knew the user tasks, we knew the target groups, and we knew the business objectives. And then we had kind of a process where we prioritized one core, which was a form of cancer, say lung cancer. So the core is a cancer form. And then we had this core workshop to work across silos and competencies to define the most important content elements and how to prioritize. And we knew that our main call to actions, or we defined and found that the main call to action should be contact the cancer line to talk to a human being. Mm-hmm. And we very much downplayed the become a member. And we found out if you treat people well, they will become members eventually. You don't have to recruit cancer patients. You have to treat them well, and they will become members. And
interesting. So you actually the main call to action with it, which they felt was the thing that they should be pushing for, you downplayed that, but it actually helped their main objective.
Yeah, we just buried the become member. We made kind of long pages with quality content around concept firms, and almost at the bottom was become a member. But by hiding the become a member call to action, we actually doubled the number of membership. So it's kind of finding the right, and the core model, it's about defining this core, and then you create inward paths. How should people find the core content? And you define the forward paths. What should happen next? So we also find a forward path, which is when you come to the website, you're not there to donate, but a forward path was to read about cancer research and understand that these are very important projects. And on that page, we could have a call to action on donate. And this tactic actually led to a 200% increase in donations. So not just the core model, but using this thinking about inward paths, forward paths, and how these connect.
Right. So that's all part of the canvas, the inward paths and the outward paths. That's part of the methodology.
Yeah, maybe I should explain the canvas.
Yeah, I was
Uh,
actually going to remind people also that we have a workshop available on in the core model through Omnichannel X already. If you have been a subscriber, when you should have access to that to see a little bit more detail with some visuals. But please do walk us through what the canvas looks like so people can kind of picture it a bit.
Yeah, it's 6 very simple elements, or actually it's 6 questions that you have to answer in the process. And if you answer these questions one by one, then we will come out with a much clearer picture of what to make or what to ask your AI to create. So the canvas has a top floor where you have the first element is the target group. Who are you making this solution for? The next element is user tasks. What do people come to do? What are their needs? And the third element are the business objectives, the measurable key results that you want this core to actually deliver on. So that's the top floor, the context.
Across the top. Yeah.
And then you have the main floor, which is a inward path to a core, and then a forward path from the core. And the inward path is how should people find your content? How do you drive traffic? Or another way to look at it is what is the previous path of the customer journey before this core? So this is about it's about inbound marketing, it's about information architecture, it's about customer journey, so it's design thinking. So you define the inward paths, and then before you come to the core content, you define also the forward paths. And the forward paths is what you want to happen next. So then you look at the business objectives and you define, so how do you want this customer journey to continue? And if you look at your business objectives, then you have a much clearer picture of what should be your call to action. You could also leverage principles from behavioral design on how to encourage that behavior that you want. So the inward paths and the forward paths, and when you have all of these, when you have these elements, you answer these questions, then you come to the core content, which is how do you answer the questions and reach the business objectives at the same time. So, and this is about not jumping to solution, but defining this framework before you work with the solution. And yeah, and there are a number of different techniques for how you can work with content, core content, but typically you define some overarching principles that you want, and you look at different content elements and what functionality you need. And also you ask yourself what channel should its content be leveraged in. So actually the core model is channel agnostic. You define the content and then you see at what channels could this content be presented in.
So the channel comes last after you defined what the answers are going to be. Yeah. So I'm a big fan of this concept. I think it relates a lot to the kind of customer journey work that we're doing. It's kind of a little window into the customer journey. So to summarize, just to come back here, so you have across the top, you've got who, your target audience, what they want to do, and then the business objectives. Kind of your context setting, and then there's mini context journey, a mini customer journey of the incoming paths and the outgoing paths. So where might they have come from? So the user context, and then calls to action and paths out of that particular piece of
Mm.
content. Then
Mm.
at the end of that, you discuss, okay, well, what channels should this appear on? So you could, that the same kind of core could be represented on multiple channels.
Yeah, absolutely. You might find that, or very often we see that this is actually a YouTube video. It's not a web page, or this is something completely different. So I had this cute little example where we're making a website for Telenor, which is the largest telco in Norway. And we wanted, or the task was to make a website that explained their invoice. So nobody understood the invoice, and we were supposed to explain it. But using the core model, we saw that, of course, the core is not the website. Nobody would use the website. The core is actually the invoice itself. So we had to make a better invoice so that people didn't have any questions. So that's a kind of a typical example of where you use this framework to actually see that the core is something else. It's a different channel than what you thought initially.
Yeah, that's a great one where you're actually going, what is the actual user need and desire, and how are they actually going to want to access it?
Mm.
Okay, so how does this, with this big session series we're doing this year is about content modeling, and I mentioned we're going to talk about AI a lot. How does this relate to content modeling? I was thinking specifically, could you have a content type as your core as opposed to a specific piece of content? In the sense, could you use this to define what should be the typical inroads and typical out paths from our articles, or a certain class of article, or a how-to page, or how does these two things map up?
Mm. Yeah, so, I think the problem, a huge problem with content modeling is that it's so abstract. It's so difficult to comprehend. So headless and content modeling is basically a paradigm shift, and that's hard for people in an organization to understand. And I think that by starting out with something concrete or a core, and having a process to define it, and then use these results to inform the content modeling process. But since the core could be anything, you could definitely start with a content element that you or a hypothesis about the content element, or you could use the core model to define which parts, or you can deconstruct the core and see how the content model should align to this. So, but it's about having a concrete starting point and something concrete that you can hold on to, so that you understand the other concepts of content modeling. And I know that Sanity or Carrie Hain is a fan of using this method. So before you start content modeling, you do a core workshop to see, to inform the process and have people understand this thinking, because the core, being channel agnostic, what you want are content elements that kind of answers the user tasks and fulfills the business goals. So it's a much more concrete approach to content modeling.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a pedagogical way of understanding content modeling.
Yeah, I think that's great, because one of the things we struggle with, one of the things we've been addressing in this series this year, has been the abstractness and the difficulty of wrapping your head around content modeling. It's it's something that people need, but something people don't understand. It's been one of the most exciting topics we've addressed. We've got a huge number of people registering for these sessions, because with headless, and I think with artificial intelligence, which I'd like to ask you about now, it's going to become more and more important to have this structured approach to define our content types, our content elements, and how that really maps to user needs regardless of channel. So I'm interested. So we started at the top of the session talking about AI. How does the core model, this process of strategically working out our user needs and our content structures and how it addresses user needs, how does that relate to AI? Like how does this make us more able to leverage AI, or keep talking about AI making us redundant? So how does these two things fit together?
Yeah, like I said in the beginning, in the intro, is that the main problem with the AI is knowing what to ask for, what you want AI to do for you. And the core model helps you define what you want. So you take the user needs and the business objectives, and from the inward path, you can also look at the search words. So what are the keywords people are using? That's an important part of the inward paths. And the forward path is about prioritization and calls to action. So, and when you're working with core content, you define these overarching principles and prioritization and channels. So when you have this, you have a very good starting point for making prompts for AI and giving AI or ChatGPT or Claude or whatever there are literally hundreds of tools and a new AI startup every day. So whatever tool you're using, you now have a much better starting point for creating good prompts and feeding AI with the background it needs. So from the target group, you could define a persona and have AI answer the questions that this persona have. And that is something that AI likes to know the target audience, because then it can tailor the content towards that. And in the user tasks, you have the questions that people want to get answered. So that's also a very good input to AI. So AI knows what to answer and for whom. And of course, you can also have AI create different kinds of content for different channels. So how should this be leveraged on a web page or in a social media LinkedIn post or whatever? So you can use AI to generate different forms of your content. So, but of course, using AI, this is a kind of a sparring partner, a first draft. You have to do QA, and another thing you could input, of course, is your tone of voice and other principles you have defined in your strategy. And when we're not just AI will produce the entire website for you in a not distant future. So then you can input your design system, and they can use this framework to know what you want to feed AI with and what context you should give it, and also having an understanding within the organization how we use AI to create content that delivers on user needs and business objectives.
So this provides us context even internally to help our colleagues understand how to apply AI, where it can be applied, and how to couch that properly in user needs and strategy. Yeah, I like that. I like that. We've actually used it in some cases for question brainstorming, in the sense of the AI has access to an enormous amount of human interactions. So you can ask it things like, what would this kind of persona, you feed it your persona, want to know about this kind of product? Or what questions might they have at this stage of a process? And it can actually generate questions. That's an interesting, fun thing to try if you're trying to brainstorm.
Yeah, and one thing to do top task analysis on your website, just asking people what they came to the website to do. Then you get a lot of free text, free form input, and having AI look through that and define the top tasks based on this and formulate the questions. That's a great input to your user tasks. So
excellent.
Right.
So use it to summarize actual research data.
Yeah.
And as always, we always caveat this with you cannot just trust AI without checking its work.
Of course.
I always treat AI as a very, 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 very junior member of the team. So they're very useful, very fast, very efficient, but need to be checked.
Definitely.
Okay, so where can we learn more about you and the core model, Ari? How should people connect with you or follow up, or if they have questions?
Yeah, I have a book in forthcoming book. It's titled The Core Model, A Common Sense Approach to Digital Strategy and Design. So it's hopefully this fall it will come out and people can buy it. But in the meantime, you can look at my website on thecoremodel.com. And of course, sign up for the mailing list to be informed when the book is there. And also to get the templates and articles on how to understand the core model in this process. And yeah, so thecoremodel.com, and then of course you can check out my LinkedIn profile and follow me, and then you get so connect on LinkedIn and check out thecoremodel.com.
Excellent. Okay, great. Thank you so much, Ari, for your time today. If people want to keep in touch with me, LinkedIn is a good place too, or urbinaconsulting.com. And please do check out the rest of the sessions available on this content modeling session series that we're running. All of these sessions will be available on demand after the series ends, and they're all available free of charge. So you can sign up for an individual session, or you can sign up for the whole thing and get notified about all the sessions as they come out, or we get access to the entire session library once it's all available on demand. So that's on omnichannelx.digital, and you can check under our events section. And if you have any more questions, or if you have topics you'd like us to see addressed in the future, please do contact us. So thank you very much, Ari, and thank you all to us for joining the session. Talk soon, everybody.